So I recently restarted a project where I've been creating a tarot deck. And by creating a tarot deck, I mean I am redesigning the tarot, the Rider Waite one, to suit my needs and my definitions for reality, I guess. And I am also working on like a visual element of it. And I wanted to share, as I was kind of getting back into this project today, I am coming at it from multiple angles, and I've kind of forgotten how many different iterations of decks I've made. And I thought they were pretty cool. I was looking through them. I haven't really ever done a long-term project like this. I've never actually done a long-term project this way. So I was kind of disorganized in the beginning in terms of like keeping track of the different deck meanings that I was creating, because I would create entire decks and then sometimes I would print out the information, and sometimes I would just kind of leave it as like a part of the development. So one of the decks that I first made that was usable for me I printed out my own definitions for the cards as it relates to working with my ADHD and my autism, and how that functions in my work environment. By work environment, I mean working on projects and flow states. And so I worked with ChatGPT by explaining a lot of the ideas that I wanted, and then ChatGPT helped kind of organize that. And then I printed out the meanings and then placed them on this deck. And so like Knight of Wands, finding the balance between passion and sustainable effort. That I really didn't like how tarot feels very moralistic, kind of like you should do these things. And at the time I was really not resonating with many of the meanings of cards that were on the decks themselves and that were the established meanings. I wanted these meanings to be kinder to myself because I was going through a hard time. I was really wanting to use the decks to get to know myself, to understand my emotions, and to kind of understand the deeper meaning of things that had happened, not in the future. Like Nine of Swords is one about like anxiety. And so to pull that kind of card, if I'm anxious, like that usually would just make me more anxious. So I would put things on here that were almost like instructive. Releasing anxious overthinking by trusting yourself. I also took the approach of like, this is almost like past tense. Like, here's the good thing you just did regarding when you were anxious. And that was such a helpful like shift for me. And it made it so that as I learned the cards, learned the meanings of the decks, the traditional ones, these meanings that I added were at the forefront. And so it's almost like I learned the cards my own way. I also used different decks to, when I was coming out of burnout, and I feel like I'm in a burnout place again after this summer, I used regular cards and I would write tasks or items that I would be willing to do, like self-care tasks or work tasks like laptop or iPad. Sometimes it would be like, what do I work on? Listen to music. And so this deck was really helpful, like towards the beginning of when I was recently like not working, not teaching anymore. And it was really hard for me to create a structure for myself. I also was brainstorming for this deck idea and trying to understand like how the world works, honestly. And so I was learning about different types of like framework. And so I would print out stickers, intuition, logic, integration model, ritualistic or cyclical creation, challenge, solution, growth framework, sensory input mapping, meditative creation process, the 4 questions framework. And so these were meant to kind of help get my brain going in a direction that was helpful and more focused instead of, like that's what I kind of need. I need help with the executive functioning elements of my work. And I also took time, like I would play around with coloring certain cards. And then this set had astrology linked with it, Jupiter and Libra, and pause at the bottom. 1 deck. And I also made a deck for my other decks to to know which ones I should pull from. So like I put the names on there. And then I also put books of mine because I was using, I guess the word is bibliomancy. And so, and TikTok's even on here. Because TikTok's been a really helpful part for my getting to this point, both in like community and inspiration. Next, I want to show you guys some of my actual physical, like visual decks that I've been making. So it started off with using a sticker book to with really cool stickers to create like collaged images. And I did a good bunch of these, super fun. I was really happy with how they turned out. They didn't have any meaning behind them. I was just playing with composition and imagery. And at one point I got like contact paper. I don't know if it's called contact paper, but basically the thing you can laminate with to see like how I liked that. And you can kind of see that little edge. I liked that. That was a really like fun. I like the laminate. It just feels so much different and better. Maybe they function differently, maybe not so much like easily, not so easily shuffled or something. But anyways, so this was like a whole period of time for me when I was working on these. Later, I transitioned to just pure collage. And these ones, which was kind of cool, had a little bit of a theme of like a blue and brown or blue and orange kind of feel to it. Very natural textures. This one has more of like an animal. And that kind of coincided with when I was learning about ACEOs or trading cards. And I was also making those to just kind of keep playing with collage, with my practice. So I guess these are like prototypes. This is like research and development. At one point, I also made I printed out on this really small like photo printer old work that I had done, my old art projects. And because my work in general has a lot of like layers of meaning to it. So like I printed out like photos of drawings that I had done and tried to kind of make a deck with those guys. I mean, this was one of the first paintings I sold in my undergrad. And so this was playing with kind of like a different texture of paper, very thick watercolor paper, and also kind of working with symbolism in my own work, my own visual vocabulary. The last thing I wanted to show you guys is, so my son's been getting into Pokemon because it's been an easy thing to kind of facilitate with him. I bought a bunch on Amazon and then I started like hiding them around the house. And then he got really excited, and then yeah, we started to create our own. And what we do is there's a like how to draw a Pokemon book, which is funny because it goes back to my my first days of teaching when I taught at like a after school art place for kids. So I had to draw a lot of Pokemon there. And it's been like 15 years since I did that. And so now I'm back at it. And so what I'll do is I'll draw lightly the drawings and he will color them in. And then he makes his own little Pokemon Pokeballs on the back, and he like like, is that not the cutest thing? And he customizes them. And so I brought those home when we did these when we went out to Big Bear, and he got sick there. And so this is what we did instead of going out. And so I brought them back and I like laminated them with like a really sparkly stars on both sides, partly because they were getting dirty because of the color was rubbing off. And I wanted him to be able to handle them. And then he's putting them in his little Pokemon book. Yeah, so this has been my experience with cards in general, I guess. Stay tuned for when I start actually making the final iteration of this deck. Thanks for watching.